No final completion dates. Page 7. These are mistakes the city's made before. I'd like to call to order Middletown City Council meeting for September 7th, 2021. It's a little early, so it's not quite the official start to the meeting, but we're starting early for the purposes of moving to executive session today. So, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll for us?
Yes, here. Sorry.
Here.
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 Here. Okay, under the authority of ORC 121.22G8 to consider confidential information related to the marketing plans, specific business strategy, production techniques, trade secrets, or personal financial statements of an applicant for economic development assistance, or to negotiations with other political subdivisions respecting a request for economic development assistance, provided that both of the following conditions apply. 1, the information is directly related to a request for economic development assistance that is to be provided or administered under any provision of Chapter 715, 725, 1724, or 1728, or Sections 701.07, 3735.67 to 3735.70, 5709.40 to 5709.43, 5709.61 to 5709.69, 5709.73 to 5709.75, or 5709.77 to 5709.81 of the revised code, or that involves public infrastructure improvements or the extension of utility services that are directly related to an economic development project. 2, unanimous quorum of the public body determines by roll call vote that the executive session is necessary to protect the interests of the applicant or the possible investment or expenditure of public funds to be made in connection with the economic development project. Do we have a motion to move to executive session?
So move for adoption.
Second?
Ms. Skank, you please call the roll?
Miss Nenny.
Yes.
Mr. Moon.
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan.
Yes.
Mayor Condrey.
Yes.
Miss Vittori.
Yes.
With that, we'll move to executive session and come back in council chambers to go back in open session.
Good for you.
How are you?
Good.
Been through them because
Do I have a motion to move back into open session?
So moved?
Ms. Kanku, please call the roll.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori.
Yes.
This officially starts our city council meeting for September 7th, 2021. Let's start with a moment of meditation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Closer to me if you needed to.
Okay, this is probably my biggest honor as mayor so far, and I'm a little bit giddy about it. So we're going to start this evening with a presentation for a proclamation recognizing Officer Denny Jordan. So Officer Jordan, you want to come on up? Chief Burke, if you want to come up, whoever wants to come on up. I'm going to go to the dais and we'll present this. Well, this is perhaps a little long overdue, but still, nonetheless, I'm really honored that we as a city are recognizing an incredible officer that we have in our midst. And we also know that he represents the entirety of the Middletown Police Department. So you would do an incredible job representing them and being a part of them and representing our citizens. So thank you so much. And I'm going to read this proclamation for you. Whereas it is a great honor and pleasure to celebrate Officer Dennis Jordan, a dedicated member of the Middletown Division of Police for more than 22 years. And whereas on August 31st, 2020, Officer Dennis Jordan was assisting in the apprehension of a subject wanted in connection to a Hamilton homicide investigation and a parole violation. The vehicle pursuit sped through Butler and Warren counties, eventually coming to a halt in the front yard of a residential home in Turtle Creek Township. And whereas Officer Jordan gave the suspect several commands to exit the vehicle, Canine Coda was deployed using the vehicle assault technique. When Canine Coda jumped through the passenger side window, the suspect began firing his gun at Coda and officers. In the exchange of gunfire, Officer Dennis Jordan was struck 3 times, in the leg, left arm tricep, and finger. And whereas Canine Coda returned to Officer Jordan's side without being struck by any of the gunfire. Due to Officer Jordan's and Canine Coda's bravery and heroism, the suspect was arrested without further incident. And whereas the National Executive Board of the U.S. Police Canine Association selected this case as the top patrol case of the year 2020. Officer Jordan and Canine Coda were awarded the Valor Award at the North American Police Work Dog Association Conference in Oklahoma and received the 2021 Police Combat Cross Award from the Middletown Division of Police. Now, therefore, I, Nicole Condry, Mayor of the City of Middletown, Butler and Warren Counties, Ohio, publicly commend the service and law enforcement officers in our community and in communities across the nation, and do hereby honor and recognize the valor, service, and dedication of Officer Dennis Jordan and Canine Coda for their heroic actions that fateful day.
That's how you get him to pay attention. I do what I want. Yeah.
If anyone out there is thinking about joining the police force, Middletown is the place to be, obviously, so. Next, we will start a public hearing. We have text amendments for case number 1-21. I can read this. There she is. I said, yeah, she's probably going to go ahead and do that anyway.
That's a hard act to follow. So tonight I have for you is text amendment case 1-21 for the Middletown Development Code. Consideration of text amendments to the Middletown Development Code pertaining to Chapter 1204, zoning districts and use regulations, Chapter 1206, accessory and temporary use regulations, Chapter 1210, architectural standards, Chapter 1220, signage, Chapter 1226, review authority and procedures, and Chapter 1228, enforcement and penalties. Planning Commission's recommendation of approval is being forwarded to City Council for final review and decision. Next slide, please. Number 1, Chapter 1228, enforcement and penalties. 122804, affected parties. Staff requests to add "and," so the notice is considered served if provided to either the owner or tenant of a property. This adds extra protection for notice being served by staff for code violations. This addition clarifies that both the owner and occupant may be held responsible for separate violations and issued civil penalties or court citations. Chapter 1226, review authority and procedures. 1226.15, fees. Staff requests to add a $25 fee for architecture review board application submittals, $30 review fee for residential driveway expansion review, and a $30 review fee for residential uses installed above commercial uses. These are types of permit reviews and special hearings that we do not have any associated fees for. And you'll notice the highlighted text is the proposed that I'm talking about. Next slide, please. Chapter 1220, signage. 1220.08, permanent signage in non-residential districts. Requests, make changes to Table 1220-1, maximum building sign area allowance, to clarify the difference between UCC, UCS, and BCR subdistricts, and add all other residential zoning district and non-residential uses in residential districts. This update corrects a conflict in language concerning allowed square footage for non-residential uses in residential districts. Next slide, please. Number 4, Chapter 1220, signage. 1220.09, temporary signs. Request change the maximum sign area for a banner sign from 24 square feet to 32 square feet. Staff have run into many issues approving banners for special event permits due to 24 square feet being irregular for the size of a banner. Typically, we receive requests that are 32 feet in size, 32 square feet in size, I should say. Next slide. Chapter 1220, signage, 1220.03, prohibited signs, request, 1220.03, N10, to read blade/feather signs, adding clarification due to a number of requests we've had asking if a blade sign is the same as a feather sign. It is. Next slide. Number 6, Chapter 1206, accessory and temporary use regulations, 1206.01, accessory use and structures. The request is changing 1206.01 B2 to allow accessory structures to be built on the lot that contains the principal structure and/or adjoining real property of the owner. Next slide. 7, Chapter 1206, accessory and temporary use regulations, 1206.01, accessory uses and structures. Request. Staff requests to change 1206.01 B9 to specify that any structure over 200 square feet and visible from a public street shall have the approximate color and material as the front of the existing primary building if visible from a public street. When the provision is not met, the material shall be reviewed by our Architecture Review Board. Number 8, Chapter 1206, accessory and temporary use regulations, 1206.01, accessory uses and structures. The request is adding language to clarify that decks around swimming pools are exempt from the required 6-foot setback from other accessory structures, including swimming pools, but they must meet our required setbacks. 9, Chapter 1204, zoning districts and use regulations, Table 1204-3, principally permitted uses, adding adult entertainment uses to the permitted uses table and referencing the applicable city ordinance, Chapter 805 of the general ordinances that regulate adult entertainment uses. Number 10, Chapter 1206, zoning districts and use regulations, Table 1204-3, permitted uses table. Request prohibiting the use of skilled nursing or personal care facilities, medical clinics, pharmacies, urgent care facilities, and similar uses from the downtown, from the UCC, Urban Core Central, and UC Urban Core Support zoning districts. This request is in response to resolution number R 2021-27 that was approved by the City Council to impose a 6-month moratorium on both the acceptance and issuance of any permit regarding the establishment of skilled nursing or personal care facilities, medical clinics, pharmacies, urgent care facilities, and similar uses in the UCC and UCS support zoning districts. The moratorium will expire on November 7th, 2021. Those are all of the proposed changes that I have for you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Have we looked at any other medical corridor type of uses as we've talked about, especially as we've seen a lot of these Suboxone clinics popping up and we kind of don't have a planned experience for where we want those to possibly be able to pop up?
We can take a look at that because we put under other similar uses.
Because I know we talked about creating medical corridors, so then we kind of know, like, in these stretches, you might find these types of businesses, as opposed to them popping up across from a restaurant and in kind of a neighborhood, which it might not be as appropriate.
We can definitely look at that and get back to you.
Thank you. I'm sorry, do you know how many there are in town right now?
I do not, but also something that we can.
I would like to know that, yeah, just because I've heard some numbers lately that were very surprising to me.
Are facilities grandfathered in to that particular?
They would be if they're already in existence, but if they were to close for 12 months, no new facility could go in that location.
What other communities around us have this kind of a restriction in place?
I could get that information, but I can't answer that off the top of my head.
I just would like to know if that's a common thing that's done in a downtown area, or if we're blazing a trail here.
I can look into that and get back to you.
Yeah.
Ashley, can you also let us know what, if any, businesses already existing in the downtown or the UCC would fall under this categorization? I'm just curious to know how many and what existing businesses there already are downtown.
I can do that. I will do that for you.
Thank you.
And the
I'll have that
purpose
to
of
you.
that one in particular, can you explain that?
I'm sorry,
Can you explain the purpose of that one in particular?
this resolution?
The zoning restriction for the medical facilities.
I don't understand your question.
What is the purpose for the restriction?
It's to keep, drug rehabilitation type facilities out of our downtown.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
I just wanted to hear it paraphrased in a
Okay,
not
hopefully that
legally
answered your
sense,
question.
so that everyone understood what was being asked.
Gotcha.
Adult entertainment uses, can we talk about that? What
That's
are we
already
trying?
regulated by the police department per our chapter, General Ordinance 805. It's just important that we reference it, whereas we have not in the past, because it's handled separately entirely from our zoning code.
Okay, so by adding it in this table, what does that do for the city?
If we've had many inquiries about, different like facilities, and automatically you would think it might be allowed in the city of Middletown, you can automatically know that you need to go to this ordinance, so you can get more information and understand what you would actually need to go through,
Okay,
which is right there prohibited, so.
that was confusing to me and I got a little worried. What we were
We just had inquiries, and I think it's important that we need to call it out, since we don't specifically call out that use.
When it comes to the fees for the review authority and procedures, the fees that we're talking about adding in, do you know about how many a year we're getting of those types of requests?
In the past, we've not had many architecture review meetings, but I would say we've probably had at least 6 this year, and there's about 1 to 3 cases on each, average 2. So, that's staff time, special hearing of getting the board together and notifying residents. So, we don't have a review fee. We get quite a bit of the expanded driveway. They come through engineering, and then also we should check the pervious surface, so we do not have a fee for that as well.
And how do we enforce that for people who aren't going through the process?
We usually have someone ask, and we say we don't have a permit for it, but the engineering department works with us. There are a couple of offices down and usually make us aware of that.
I guess my question is more like what keeps people from just doing it without getting a permit or?
They're supposed to have a permit through engineering anyways for pavement.
Right.
Scott could probably talk a little bit more to
Yeah.
that, but.
I always fear that we are now, I'm not saying punishing, but people who are doing the right process now are paying more, whereas a lot of people, it seems, don't follow the process, get away with it. There's no ramifications, and they never paid a fee. And I feel like, I know we're working towards better code enforcement, but I would really like to see some of the fees, if we are going to charge it, that it goes into enforcing the regulations that are in place so that people who aren't following it can get on board with that.
To that end, I had my architecture review board meeting before this meeting tonight, and the advice that I gave to one of the applicants after they explained to me that, they didn't know that they needed a permit, they went and got the permit, then they realized that they had water drainage issues and all these other things that they needed to take care of. If you come and talk to the city first and express to them your interest in building accessory structures or expanding or any of those kind of things, if you come to the city first, you can oftentimes get a better understanding of exactly what the upfront costs for those projects are going to be. So working with the city is actually advantageous to the success of your project. So I would just echo that here at City Council so that everyone is aware of that.
Appreciate that.
All right, any other questions or comments from council before we open the public hearing?
Thank you very much.
Okay, with that, we will open the public hearing for text amendments, case number 1-21. If we have anyone who is in favor of the text amendments, I would welcome you to come up to the dais and state your name and address for the record and make your comments. Okay, with no comments in favor of, if we have anyone who has any comments in opposition to the text amendments, I would welcome you to come forward now. Okay, with that, we will close the public hearing for text amendments case number 1-21. And next we have a presentation from Greg Schwarber of Midway Baseball. If you want to come on up.
I think Mr. Schwarber was unable to make it today, so we are aptly handled by Mr. Farrell.
You look a little different.
I'm a little bit different.
Yeah.
Hey, council. I'm here tonight just to encourage us all that baseball's back in Middletown. And we have been encouraged to see, to this point, 3 fundamental camps at the Lefferson Park, the Middies baseball fields, and we've seen hundreds of kids, and that is truly remarkable. I know Tao has been there with his children, and we just are blessed. Kyle Schwarber signed on early on to help us. For Kyle, baseball and sports in Middletown is of utmost importance, and he has been plagued by what he has seen, and he wants to do his part. So he's really the face, but we have seen a lot of people, college coaches, high school coaches, and other people participating in our fundamental camps. It's very well run. It is a fun time for kindergarten through 5th grade, and we have our next fundamental camp coming up on the 25th of September. And this is different because normally these have been on Sundays. And so this is Saturday, September the 25th. We had set this up to be a fantastic day. We still believe it's going to be incredible. Unfortunately, and fortunately, Kyle Schwarber has been traded. He was supposed to be with us playing for the Nationals, but his bat has carried him to Boston. And so he will not be able to be with us on the 25th, but he will be with us in the off season to do some camps as well as we encourage baseball play back here in Middletown. September the 25th from 2 to 3:30, we're encouraging kindergarten through 5th grade to come out, and it will be a fun day. The Reds mascots are going to be with us. The Reds Community Foundation has helped us. Also that day after the fundamental camp, the Midi Meal Machine is helping us. We also have one of our local participants in Donnie Osborne from the Jug. He's going to be coming out. A lot of inflatables and some fun things. But later that evening, we're going to go to the Cincinnati Reds game versus the Washington Nationals. Now, you may say, why do I need to go? Well, a couple of reasons. Number one, the Reds are in contention for the wild card. So that's the last weekend of regular season play on that Saturday evening. We're asking you all to just promote this and to get excited about it because the Reds Community Foundation is giving us not only 100 free tickets for children, but they're also giving us $5 for every ticket sold. They're discount tickets. We're in left field. You can purchase other tickets, but we're very, very excited. We've seen funds raised. We're continuing to see funds raised for an incredible thing, and this is Midway baseball. Tonight, I'm presenting this to council and to the city. I'm going to leave it with the clerk of council. She can probably help us figure out, or someone can help us figure out where we want to hoist this. This is just a montage to growing up here in Middletown. It's got Kyle in his younger days. It's got a shot of him playing high school baseball when he played with Indiana, had great success. He was called to be a part of USA Baseball. Then he played with the Cubs. We only had 6 slots, so he was with the Nationals a little bit. We've got him finally in this picture of the Boston Red Sox, who were in playoff contention as well. And it says, as you can see, once a minute, always a minute. So we're grateful, we're thankful for all of our participants, and we would ask you to get excited because America's pastime is coming back to this great city. Thank you so much for your time. Please promote this great event and more details to come. Thanks.
Woohoo. All right. Okay, thank you. Our next presentation is the DMI security update from Jeff Payne, the Executive Director of Downtown Middletown, Inc.
I don't think Mr. Payne is here, so
him,
we can
yeah.
move on from this one and we will reschedule it. for a different time.
Yeah, I apologize. Mr. Payne had asked us if he could be on here, so we assumed that he would make it, and I'm not sure what called him away, so we'll have to do it another night.
All right, then our next presentation is the Parks Master Plan presentation.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we'd like to run you through a quick presentation about the progress of our Parks Master Plan. It's been quite a process, and we're excited to present the final document to you. If you could go to the next slide, please. So quickly, we'll review the process that brought us to these final steps. Those who helped us get here, a quick summary of the document, and our next steps and any questions you might have. So as a brief summary, last we were here, we kind of were in the exploration phase. The 3 phases were to utilize, that we utilized to direct and structure not only the process of the project, but the document as well. During these phases, we worked to become aware of our existing system, how we would work with and engage the community and stakeholders during these challenging times, and assess how this document and process would identify and meet both needs and wants of our system and community. We then explored how the plan and concepts could address these needs and wants and gaps identified during the awareness phase. We refined these to reflect the community input as with each phase, and pushed ahead into the final phase, the vision phase, which we are at today. Go to the next slide, please. And so, of course, engagement and participation are keys to success, and we want to thank and acknowledge all of those who supported, participated, and helped make the plan possible. City Council, staff, Park Board, we have here, stakeholders, and community members. We are excited, delighted, and thankful for all your involvement. On that note, we'd also like to thank the consultants on the project, V3 and Human Nature, who have given us an awesome experience and a usable plan. With that, I will hand it over to Sarah Evans with V3 and Sarah DeLandro with Human Nature.
Ladies, would you like the clicker to work on your own slides, or would you want me to let me know? Whatever you like. The big button in the middle. We'll move it forward.
Well, good evening. I'm actually glad we got to follow the Midway baseball presentation. It's following a recreation theme. We're super excited about the recreation that exists in Middletown and the opportunities that were discovered through our process. And to dovetail on the comments that Allie made, we're super excited and understand that folks in the community are very excited about the opportunities as well, and that's expressed through the 35 members of our advisory groups, as well as the 490 participants that participated in our survey. That was a combination of community participants, as well as high school students. So lots of great feedback for us to work with. My name is Sarah Evans. I'm the project manager for this process. I'm with V3. And we're keeping it easy. This is my partner, Sarah DeLandro. She's with Human Nature. This next slide identifies the layout of the master plan document. And very much like the process that Allie described that we undertook in the overall project, our document is laid out in that same way. So the executive summary is in chapter 1. It's the introduction chapter, and then we move into the awareness chapter, which catalogs all of the information that we collected throughout the process. We visited all of your parks and public spaces. We compared Middletown against some of your neighboring and key or peer communities as well. And then moved into chapter 3, which is our exploration chapter, which is where we explored some concepts at the park system level, so how your parks are connected within the community and also to assets within the community, and then individual park sites as well. The vision phase is sort of where we start to get into the real meats and potatoes of the plan, and that's chapter 4. We're going to spend a little bit of time with you all tonight discussing that chapter, as well as chapter 5, the action plan. And just a note on the vision chapter, as we did our exploration process, some themes started to bubble to the top, and that's how we started to organize the vision chapter. So immediate needs are those items that needed to be addressed either from a safety standpoint or that were impeding use of. We saw a lot of sports courts that fall into this area, as well as playground improvements. And then basic improvements is sort of that next tier of items, and that has to do with connectivity of elements within each park sites, some upgrades, some standardization of site furnishings, those types of things. And again, we looked at the system-wide scale as well as your individual parks, so community parks, neighborhood and mini parks, and developed parks. And then aspirational items are sort of those elements that will start to really move the needle for Middletown. So we know that you're undergoing a lot of planning processes right now, including the Parks Master Plan, as well as the Comprehensive Plan. We are identifying areas that can really utilize your park system to attract businesses and people for the community. And then programming on events that we also touched on that in Chapter 4. Action plan then are sort of those next steps that staff would need to take in order to start implementing the plan. And again, those are very much organized in that same tiered system, as well as identifying funding improvements, or funding opportunities, staffing recommendations, and then the plan priorities. So with that, I'll hand it over to Sarah to get into some of those details of the Chapter 4 vision plan.
So as Sarah mentioned, we have this plan that recommends an incremental strategy for addressing those 3 tiers of recommendations: the immediate needs, the basic improvements, and the aspirations that were identified throughout the entire park system. And as Sarah mentioned as well, the immediate needs really focus on repairing and replacing existing elements within the parks, items that may have deteriorated over time, such as cracked and settled pavements, playgrounds that no longer meet current safety standards, hazardous trees and invasive plants. And concerns about these issues were expressed throughout the entire master planning process by city staff, key stakeholders, general public. And so we think that, we believe that addressing these items early on will go a long way to addressing those concerns, and as well as building a positive image for Middletown's park system. The basic improvements include some of the incremental investments in new and improved facilities across the park system. Some examples of these improvements include lighting for safety, restrooms, updated play environments, ADA accessibility to park amenities, walking loops, new and improved recreational courts, fields, and support amenities, and tree planting. Some examples that fall within that category. And as these elements are added, there's opportunity to utilize a new set of coordinated standards for signage, furnishings, and structures. This can provide, a more cohesive brand or character that may help make procurement and repairs more efficient and potentially more economical. The master plan includes a preliminary character standard for site furnishings, using Sunset Park as a precedent, and these standards can then guide the city as improvements are made to future parks or park improvements in the future. And so this slide shows some of those examples currently found at Sunset. Concepts for each community park depict many of the basic improvement recommendations and are included in this vision chapter. The entire vision chapter for the park system is contained within this one cohesive chapter, making it a very usable document that can be even be excerpted. Serve as an excerpt for Middletown to use as this plan is implemented. And then the aspirations, these recommendations incorporate some of the larger, longer-term, system-wide desires that were identified during the master planning process. And like Sarah said, some of these recommendations help move the needle from a good park system to a great park system. And we believe that can focus on two main recommendations. The first is celebrating the community's connection to the river, particularly through the downtown, and as well as better connecting all of the parks and open spaces throughout the system. Both strategies will take time, resources, partnerships, investments to be accomplished, but they will ultimately help strengthen the central business district, improve access to all of your parks throughout the community, and provide healthy mobility options for residents. Middletown can further build on its well-distributed park system by better connecting all of your parks and open spaces and community assets with on and off-road trails, gateways, greenways, and blueways. These cross-sections here show some examples of how Middletown's current transportation corridors could be modified to incorporate some off-road connectivity options. System-wide maps were used to show how these community connections can link to local and regional assets and provide a foundation for future trails master planning efforts. And then we get into the action plan.
So with each chapter, we move into a little bit more detail. And one of the tasks that our team was given was to make this a unique plan for Middletown, as well as a tool that they can use in implementing. And so the action plan is one of those tools that we've developed. Now, in the narrative of the action plan, we're trying to describe a lot of the work that has gone into to the tool. But this slide up here shows you a snippet of a spreadsheet document that we've developed for city staff that catalogs each park site and then identifies, again, those immediate needs, the basic improvements, and the aspirational items with costing information for them as well. So that they have a tool that, as you can see the last column there, the funding sources, as funding sources are identified, grants are written, that a column can be filled out as in a strategic manner to apply for funding. So again, we'll break this down into those tiers that we talked about earlier. Immediate needs. So we cataloged, again, all of the improvements that would be needed to improve safety or posed a concern that was identified by city staff. And so we've again organized those by community parks, neighborhood parks, mini parks, and then system-wide. One of the system-wide elements that we identified as an immediate need would be to develop the detail character standards that Sarah reviewed with you all on the slide, one of the previous slides, because as improvements are identified at each park, you'll want to implement something that, again, expresses this is a Middletown park. Folks know how to use the system. It makes maintenance and repairs a lot easier. And then at the bottom there, the immediate needs total is approximately $1.6 million. We also broke this down into year recommendations, as this is a 10-year master plan. So these immediate needs are envisioned to be taken on at the very start of the master plan. And then the basic improvements, and again, we organize them in that same way from community parks, and all of these costs were developed by the concepts that were developed and vetted through our advisory groups and public feedback. Neighborhood parks, one of the recommendations of the plan that came out of the process was that neighborhood parks really serve as a living room to each one of the neighborhoods, and they should be unique to reflect those unique neighborhood needs. And so the master plan does not identify a concept for each neighborhood park because we recommend that as a engagement process that would be undertaken as a next step for the city. What we did is include costing that would be part of the master planning process for each park, and then utilizing our knowledge of park improvements for these types of parks, as well as looking at Sunset Park as a recent improvement, developed a range of costs to planning for those capital improvements, so that you, again, even though the concept is not developed, you have a budget that plans for improvements there. Many parks, same approach as the neighborhood parks, and then plazas, that was developed off of a concept that has been developed for Don Plaza. Undeveloped parks, the team looked at a concept for addressing some of the different types of recreational experiences that folks in Middletown are wanting to have, and developed that park concept for Jonathan Park, so that's what we use for costing, and then the same utilizing our applied knowledge for the 3 undeveloped parks there that did not have costing developed. However, there was like a park that was identified as a good candidate for a disc golf park, and so that was applied in the costing of that one, 3 fountains. And then system-wide, developing a dog park master plan, that was one of the elements in a concept that folks were really excited about. We know that this has been a topic that's been talked about in the community, and so wanting to include costs for that planning process as well. And then lastly, the aspirations. So again, these are all of those elements that are really going to move the needle, organized by community parks. That's where you'll see a lot of the system-wide recommendations as well. So developing an aquatics master plan, the community has expressed an interest in having aquatics recreation experiences, and based on the feedback from the city, we know that you all want to be a partner in that process. Not all of these elements need to be done by the city alone, and as we talked about, identifying partners is going to be a key of that. Trails master plans, gateway standards, and kayak launches also fell under the aspirational costing. And then again, as we look at staffing recommendations, we're looking at that same organization method of immediate needs, basic improvements, and aspirations. And we have identified some recommendations to not only increase the staffing capacity within the city staff, but also how to engage the community through different volunteer opportunities. Grilling with the mayor is an identified event that you could possibly implement, as well as fundraising, and then staff development recommendations to ensure that the staff is equipped with the tools that they need to operate and maintain the parks. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Allie.
So as part of our next steps, kind of jumping off from the final plan, we've already began working towards improvements like having a certified playground safety inspector on staff, and training employees to have this certification, as well as looking at infrastructure projects within the parks, such as improved playgrounds, lighting, and parking lots, and so on. And then,
you know, that basically concludes the formal presentation. I did want to mention sort of about the process. Park Board has adopted the plan, or is recommending adoption of the plan to City Council. They did that at their last meeting. Just want to acknowledge we have a couple Park Board members here with us tonight, Irene Earl and Carolyn Kiefer. We'd be looking to bring this back for adoption at a council meeting at a later date after you had a little more time to digest it. I know everybody, I think, just got it probably last Friday, and it's a lot to look through. But at this point, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
I just want to say thank you to you and to Allie especially, who worked so hard on this. I mean, being on Park Board, and I'm not even there all the time either, so thank you to the Park Board. I know what a big endeavor this was, and they did such a terrific job, and the consultants as well. So I just wanted to offer my thanks.
I agree with that. yeah, job well done. It's a comprehensive plan and should guide our decisions as council and city for the next decade. Just a question about staffing for implementation. What do you foresee the need? I mean, this is even just the basic improvements, and then going on.
Right, and I think, and maybe help me out, I think in the chart there, I mean, we certainly would love to have a Parks and Recreation department at some point. We understand that would be a challenge right now, funding-wise. We'll put it out there. We have 6 full-time employees in parks. That's it for the entire city, which is very little. I think if you start looking at the comparable communities, very little. So, I mean, Parks falls under Public Works. I'm certainly not a Parks and Recreation expert, but at the same time, I think as we grow and as economic development opportunities present themselves, we're certainly going to be wanting to look at a department of its own potentially in the future, if that's what the citizens want, as they want more recreation opportunities. You know, we have very little to no programming now. I mean, Public Works, we just do maintenance generally. So I think it's something we need to, you know, certain, we talk about it in the plan, but it's going to be vital to have that if we want to expand on what we have going forward. So.
But there are some capital improvements that are.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think initially we're looking at all capital improvements initially, and as we get into that aspirational phase, we could consider the potential personnel that may come along with all these improvements.
And I can tell, yeah, certainly the capital improvements make a difference because the feedback I get from Sunset Park, of course, and the long-term control plan improvements that were made there, it really makes a difference in usage and community pride and everything. So.
And we'll absolutely look for opportunities to leverage other money with the different plans out there. Water, sewer, stormwater, transportation plans, even with the fire stations. And I think we look at some improvements to Dowling Park if that goes forward.
Does the plan have any recommendations to eliminate existing parks? I know that was part of the discussion at the beginning because of sustainability and population density.
Yeah, we, touching on the comparative analysis that Scott was mentioning earlier, we did compare Middletown to other communities, neighboring best-in-class peer. In terms of eliminating parks, there were no recommendations to eliminate parks. You know, we understand that, again, we looked at it through an equity lens in terms of geographical placement of parks throughout the community. And when we looked at that, Middletown has really good coverage from a geographical standpoint. So if we eliminate a park, then that would leave some areas of the community without access to parks. And so we think that that's a strength that you have, that you should celebrate. But removing one of those parks was not a recommendation of the process.
Was there anything in there that would say that we should, for example, if there's equipment that is causing probably a liability of some sort, that perhaps it's worth eliminating the equipment, making it green space instead of adding more because of sustainability and population density again?
Yeah, so we looked at some of the immediate action recommendations are to assess some of the play structures that are cause for concern. That was noted by staff, and there's a CPSI certified staff member that can work on some of those assessments. We did also look at recommendations to reduce mowing of your turf areas in a lot of parks and converting those to either stormwater management type landscapes or pollinator type landscapes, because folks in our engagement process express desires for different types of park landscape experiences. So also looking to how we can reduce some of the operations and maintenance cost on the park system.
I think I'd love to hear from city staff if we could look at that 1.6 million, which is the immediate, and I know we're playing with our ARPA funds still. I think also in terms of the community center project that we're looking at for the Rosa Parks area, one, I think staffing-wise over time, that's going to obviously have to ramp up with programming and maybe could bleed across other parks. But two, I've gotten some feedback from people in the public about the location, which I think it's a great location strategically, I understand it, but I can also see how other neighborhoods are feeling a little slighted. And in particular, with this 1.6 million that you recommended, two of the biggest things that look like they have immediate needs are Damon Park and Goldman Park, which is the Mayfield and the Amanda area. And I think in particular, those two neighborhoods feel a little slighted, and they probably should. And so I really would like to consider how we might be able to, as we are looking to build this new community center and create recreation for the Rosa Parks area and beyond, I understand that because we'll have busing and what have you, but having your own living room, as you mentioned, is important. And I think for Amanda and for Mayfield, it would be nice to see how we can give them a nice living room as well.
Great. No further comments? Okay, thank you guys very much. That brings us to citizen comments for the evening. We have three. The first one is from Mr. Chris Batty. If you want to come up to the dais and state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. Chris Batty, 128 Marymount Court. In the state of Ohio, as in all 50 states, a face mask is legally designated as a medical device by FDA Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, Section 201H, Definition 2. Therefore, in every single state, including Ohio, even just recommending that someone wear a regulated medical device is the unlicensed practice of medicine. Under the Ohio Revised Code 4731.41 and 4731.34, this violation is a 5th-degree felony. Forcing a person to wear a face mask to enter your facility, whether it be a company, school, or store, is illegal under the federal civil rights law. Title II, which requires that as a place of public accommodation, your institution must provide free and equal access to all services and facilities without discrimination. ORC 4112.02 further prohibits you from preventing entry to the full enjoyment of the business establishment as no law has been broken. So on May 18th of this year, you all were approached to make a city ordinance denouncing all illegal orders coming out of the state regarding forced wearing of face masks and forced vaccinations. To date, no action has been taken on this request by this council. We literally wrote the ordinance for you, and yet you have failed to act proactively. Since that time, our hospital and healthcare facilities are now in an uproar due to confusion over the law breaking taking place by forced face masks and vaccinations, which could have been stopped at both the city and the county level. Our office holders have shown they have little, if any, courage in defending the civil rights as well as legal rights of those of us who voted for you. No person has the right to tell another person at any time what to wear on your face, what to think, where to go, what to do, what to say, what to buy. Restricting the rights of another law-abiding person is illegal and being reinforced daily by those who do not know the law and are acting in a haphazard way regarding the civil rights of others. We as citizens are now bringing you the law and asking you to act accordingly. You took an oath before God to uphold the Ohio Constitution and the Constitution of the U.S. By failing to act at this point, you are being untruthful to your oath and to us as citizens as we struggle to survive financially in an uncertain economy where no one seems to be willing to take charge. Therefore, we are taking charge. Presently, our city is in turmoil, as several school districts have passed illegal face mask wearing policies causing outrage from parents and citizens. Since neither the CDC nor the city health director, nor any state or county health director has the authority to declare a public health emergency, schools and public health officials have zero authority under the law to quarantine children and send children home. This is causing a hardship on families as their personal lives are being turned upside down from fear of a virus that has killed, how many? 0 children in the state of Ohio from March 2010 until the present. Additionally, there is a nearly 0 infection rate in this county and particularly within this city. When the higher-ranking civil authority makes unjust or immoral law, mandates, policy, or court opinion, the lower or lesser-ranking civil authority
That's 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. The next individual I have is Ms. Candace Keller.
Candace Keller, 3430 Central Avenue. While City Council members oversee the financial future of Middletown, we also now come to you to act further in the best interest of Middletonians. Illegal mask mandates and illegal requiring medical personnel information from the citizens of Middletown, such as vaccination status stickers and open health files, is improper, illegal, and insulting to all citizens. This is no longer possible to trust our state legislators to act quickly on our behalf of our wishes, so the task now falls to you. Shutting us down and punting to the state is not what city government is capable of doing, nor will we settle for that. We now have learned we cannot trust our state leaders to listen to us, and so now we are approaching you. We are facing a situation in our nation where a third of the small business owners are bracing for bankruptcy and further hardship due to what we now see as government intrusion into our privacy. And so we are approaching Middletown City Council in the role of interposer, as we wish to request that you take the authority that you already possess to nullify illegal orders and remind you of your oath of office to represent your constituents well. We, the citizens, are not your enemies. Rather, we want to help empower you with our support to act on your authority as council members to change the climate in Middletown toward restored trust and freedom. Several legislative bodies across America are doing this very thing and are writing ordinances and resolutions to nullify unlawful mandates. In Newton County, Missouri, the city wrote, being enacted that all federal or state acts, laws, orders, rules, mandates, lockdowns, and regulations passed by the federal and state government, past, present, or future, which violate an individual's lawful First Amendment right to assemble or Fourth and Fifth Amendment right to privacy, including but not limited to personal medical decisions, shall be invalid in this city, shall not be recognized by this city, and specifically rejected by this city, and shall be considered null and void in the city. To help assist you with this, we have written an ordinance that you can use, which applies to Middletown, so that you can now utilize your powers in such a way as to protect individual rights. Additionally, Middletown business owners have asked us to draft a notice, which you could have them post on their doors, saying that Middletown is open, as many other cities across America have done. Mask mandates and all other illegal orders coming from state directive will be considered invalid within Middletown and not punishable by law. No legal action will be taken if you choose to enter and patronize this establishment without a face mask or proof of COVID vaccination. No medical history or personal health information can be required from any unlicensed medical professional in Middletown. All matters of public health are protected under HIPAA law and fall under personal liberty as described by our Constitution. At the lowest level, a violation of HIPAA law is a $50,000 fine and up to 1 year imprisonment. If HIPAA rules are violated under false pretenses, the maximum fine is up to 5 years in prison and a $100,000 fine. Middletown City Council members have the authority to do what we're asking you to do. We have approached you repeatedly. If you agree with the issuing of such ordinance and the letter of support, we need you to tell us. When will you do this? When and how can you do this for us? Thank you.
Thank you. And the last card I have this evening is from Aaron Duba. I hope I read that correctly.
Just to follow up on, actually, my name's Erin Duba, 4209 Rosedale Road. Just to follow up on this, the actual letter that, I'm sorry, hold on one second. Okay, that they could post on their doors. She said it would, Candace said, Middletown City Council members respect your Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights to privacy. There are signatures below for you to sign. It would say, mask and all other pretended laws or orders are considered invalid within Middletown and are not punishable by law. No legal action can be taken if you choose to enter and patronize this establishment without a face mask. Middletown City Council respects your First, Fourth, and Fifth Amendment rights to assemble and of your privacy. When will you do this? When and how will the public be informed of these legal actions? How soon will they go into effect? If you refuse to act now, after we have repeatedly approached you, you are forcing us to have to remove you at the next election and replace you with constitutional city council members who will obey the law. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we have council comments. We'll start with Ms. Denny.
Thank you, Mayor. I would first like to extend my thanks to Officer Denny Jordan and K-9 CODA for their bravery and actions in the line of duty, as well as all of our officers who risk their lives for our safety on a daily basis. And additionally, I'd like to thank all those who shared their congratulations on my marriage over the weekend to my new husband, Lucas. I will be changing my name, but it's a very legal process, so hopefully I'll be able to get a little bit more use out of my name tag before we have to change it. But thank you all for your kind words. I appreciate it. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Moon?
Yes, and congratulations. I believe I told you already, but congratulations publicly. Marriage is it's just wonderful. You're going to love it. But to Officer Jordan, I wish he was still here, so I hope our other officers will express just my appreciation for his service. I'm kind of in awe of everything he's been through. I can't imagine the ordeal and the rehab and everything that he's been going through these last months and years. So please just extend my thank you. Thank you isn't quite sufficient, but thank him from the bottom of my heart. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Mulligan?
Thank you, Your Honor. I too add my commendation to Officer Jordan. A year removed from the incident, it's good that our prayers were answered and he's made a comeback, a recovery, and back on the street because we need him and his colleagues. So much appreciation and thanks to his family for the many sacrifices that they've made both this year and pretty much every day that they're out there defending our freedoms. Thanks to the hard work that went into the Parks Master Plan. It's an exciting document. It's pretty thick. I'm looking forward to getting into it and into the details, and that hopefully will help guide us as a city. And also, congratulations to the Midway Baseball. It sounds like they've made some great progress over recent months. I know that we have some legislation tonight that's going to help bring back youth baseball in a robust way and add on to what so many volunteers are making possible. So, again, great public and private partnership there. I, too, finally add my congratulations to Councilwoman Denny. I've come to know you and Lucas over the past several years, and your families, of course. So great people, and very excited for you and wish you a lifetime of happiness. Thank you.
Ms. Vittori?
Sure. Well, congrats to Monica again. I mean, you just can't not say it. So welcome to the club. It's a wild ride. But I know you had a beautiful, I can't wait to see more pictures. The ones I saw were amazing. And I want to also thank Officer Jordan. I was really struck by the relationship with him and Coda. It was really nice to see them together, and thank you to Coda too, because you can just tell they really are partners and both put their lives on the line, and it's just really moving to see the power of that relationship. So I'm glad they're both here to be able to be celebrated. I also wanted to say thanks to the Midway Baseball. My 3 kids have enjoyed it very much, and I continue to hope that we can keep our relationship with the Reds going, because I know that that foundation has been helpful, and go Reds in general. I'm a big fan, but it's really nice to see all those kids out there, and the fields are beautiful, and you really do get that feeling that baseball's back, and you can see how important recreation is to our kids. So I'm just glad we're talking about recreation so much lately. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'll add my congratulations to Ms. Nitty. We won't be saying that much longer. Also, I think it's really great that Officer Jordan and our police department have taken the mantra of life happens for you and not to you. And what happened for Officer Jordan and the experience he had with CODA has allowed our police department to actually train other police departments and get some notoriety for the canine training, which is incredible. And I'm really impressed that they've taken that approach to it and maximized that experience so that they can teach others what they've learned. So that's really exciting. My other comment I wanted to make was, I know after the May meeting where the Freedom Ordinance was first brought to our attention, I asked City's legal counsel the opinion on the ability to create such an ordinance. And based on what I heard tonight, I am concerned that the previous legal guidance that we received was faulty and not completely accurate. So my question to legal counsel is, if a city council member wanted to push forward with promoting or suggesting an ordinance, what is the procedure for that, since legal disapproved basically the concept in the past?
I think the easiest path forward would be if you'd like to send a written request to council, as well as the city manager and myself, about exactly what you would like to see in an ordinance and the ideas that you believe should be forwarded. Those can be evaluated, and a new report can be provided to you. If you would choose to pursue it beyond that, I'm probably going to need to take a look at a few things and go through that process with you, but I would be happy to do that research. I just don't want to talk about it now when I don't have it off the top of my head.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. That's all I have this evening. Next, we have our city manager report.
Madam Mayor, members of council, I have just a couple of quick announcements. Our Small Business Alliance that we recently announced will be having their first meeting next Wednesday, September 15th, 8 o'clock a.m. at the Central Connection Senior Center. Anyone who wants to participate can register for free. Just go to choosemiddletownoh.org. Also coming up, the Great Miami River Cleanup Sweep, Saturday, September 18th, 9 to 12. Volunteers can sign up at greatmiamirivercleanup.org. And then there will also be some information coming out this week that will describe for folks that we will be having open houses for all 4 of our fire stations on Sunday, October 3rd. Those will be held between 2 and 4 p.m. There'll be tours, there'll be opportunity to touch a truck. So stay tuned for information on that. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
I'm writing down all these events. There's a lot. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to our consent agenda next. Ms. Skank, would you please present that for us this evening?
For your consideration this evening, we have the library board and commission minutes from October 20th and March the 16th, 2021. Minutes from the Historic Commission of April the 14th, May the 20th, June 8th, June 17th, and July 15th, 2021. Planning Commission minutes from July 14th, 2021. Civil Service Commission minutes from July 15th, 2021, and Architectural Review Board minutes from July 21st, 2021. To confirm the personnel appointment of Jared Haley to the position of firefighter EMT in the Department of Public Safety, Division of Fire. To confirm the promotional appointment of Matthew Buckner to the position of Public Works Leader in the Department of Public Works and Utilities, Street Maintenance Division. To receive and file oaths of office for Kinsey Bronnenberg, Rodney Cheney, Tracy Jenkins, and Grant Morton. And to receive and file maintenance and performance bonds submitted by Grand Communities, LLC, guaranteeing public improvements constructed as part of Renaissance Section 7 subdivision.
I move to approve the issues and actions set forth in the consent agenda.
Second.
Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Mulligan.
Yes.
Mayor Condrey.
Yes.
Ms. Vettori.
Yes.
Ms. Nenny.
Yes.
Mr. Moon.
Yes.
Ms. Cohen, will you please present the legislation for us this evening?
Yes, Your Honor. Prior to getting started this evening, we do have multiple matters we're asking you to consider as emergency legislation. So I'd ask if there's a motion to waive charter requirements for 2 readings and 30 days to enactment with regards to Resolution R 2021-33, R 2021-34, R 2021-35, Ordinance O 2021-68, Ordinance O 2021-69, O 2021-70, and O 2021-75.
I move that the charter provision requiring readings on 2 separate days be waived and that the previously read resolutions and ordinances be declared emergencies and are read one time only.
Second.
Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Condrey.
Yes.
Ms. Vettori.
Yes.
Ms. Nenny.
Yes.
Mr. Moon.
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan.
Yes.
First matter for your consideration this evening is Resolution R 2021-33, a resolution to make adjustments to appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Middletown, Counties of Butler and Warren, State of Ohio, for the period ending December 31st, 2021, and declaring an emergency. This involves the general fund.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Mr. Palanick, would you like to comment on this one?
Madam Mayor, members of council, this would be an amendment to our fiscal year 2021 budget in the amount of $20,000 that would go to pay for a consultant to do professional services related to nominating and designating a portion of the Oakland neighborhood as a National Historic District. Funds would be coming from reserves. And I think we've talked in the past about the process here, so this actually would be the funding that would pay for it.
Any questions or comments from council? Okay, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes?
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Item number 2 this evening is resolution number R 2021-34, a resolution to make adjustments to appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Middletown, counties of Butler and Warren, state of Ohio, for the period ending December 31st, 2021, and declaring an emergency, this involving general fund property acquisition.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Mr. Payne, would you like to comment on this one?
Madam Mayor, members of council, earlier we held an executive session to discuss in a little bit more detail the concepts behind this, but essentially this would be amending our fiscal year 2021 budget to add $135,000 for specifically land acquisition costs, and it would pay for a series of option payments related to the acquisition of options for properties related to the Riverfront redevelopment project. Essentially, the city would be paying for the options. We would then transfer the right to exercise those options to our private sector partner developer. And then following a purchase, sale, and development agreement, assuming that would occur, the developer would ultimately pay the cost of closing. But the cost for the options themselves are with the city. They amount in the aggregate to $135,000. So we're asking you to approve from existing general fund reserves and additional appropriation in that amount.
Mr. Palanick, so in the event that the options were exercised, the developer would be taking on the purchase price, is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
And there would be no closing until we have all the financing lined up. We know that there's funding for the project and the project is a go. We wouldn't be closing in advance and holding these properties, for example.
That is correct, and that's the reason for the options, because we only want the properties ultimately to be closed on if we know that the project will move forward, that financing is there for the project, and in fact the developer will wind up paying those purchase costs. And conversely, if we wouldn't move forward, the risk the city does have is we could lose these option payments. This is the price we pay to those individuals to give us that exclusive right to have control of it for a certain period of time, pending our ability to put all this together.
But the city would not own those properties.
Absolutely not.
Thank you.
We would only own the right, if you will, to potentially buy them at an agreed upon price in the future.
And that we can transfer that right.
To the developer in this case, that's correct, yes.
And the option length is a 12-month period of time, correct?
I believe in most cases they are at least a 12-month period, yes.
Any other comments or questions from council? Okay, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes?
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
Item number 3 this evening is resolution R 2021-35, a resolution to make adjustments to appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the city of Middletown, counties of Butler and Warren, state of Ohio, for the period ending December 31st, 2021, and declaring an emergency, this involving the general fund for legal services.
So move for adoption.
Second?
Mr. Palanick, would you like to comment?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of council, this item again would be amending our fiscal year 2021 general fund budget in a manner of asking for an additional appropriation of $250,000 to pay for expected additional legal expenses. These are primarily in 3 areas as a result of airport litigation, large-scale economic development projects, and/or labor relations and collective bargaining. So, we've had a rather unusual year probably in all those areas, and unfortunately, as a result, we've had to spend probably a good deal more than we expected on legal fees. Now, with regarding to some of the economic development projects, we may be able to reimburse ourselves later with some of the ARPA funds, but we do have to at least front this now for the costs of the legal. So this would be coming out of general fund reserves.
And this would just take us through the end of the year? Yes, through the end of the year. So-
Yes, that's correct.
Do you see this increase being something that would be something that we should anticipate next year? I mean, are we still anticipate, I mean, what, do you think that we'll have to increase our budget item next year, or just based on this?
I'm hoping that the airport litigation will be largely behind us next year. The primary labor relations and collective bargaining work is going to be the negotiation of the police department, which in large measure will be happening also the end of this year, because we're going to be getting well into this in the next number of months. So those will not be nearly as much required in the future. And those things attached to the economic development projects will largely wind up becoming out of the project expenses themselves. So I would say that I do not anticipate these kinds of added expenses like this again in the future, unless something comes out of the blue that we are absolutely not anticipating at this point.
Given the fact that you stated the word airport at all, which was not in the staff report, my advisory opinion does not require me to abstain from legislation items such as this, or Ordinance O-2021-68 or O-2021-70. But for the strength of public trust, public confidence, and also perception of city council at large, I will choose to abstain from all three of these. Any other comments or questions from council? Okay, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Abstain.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
The next matter for your consideration is Resolution R 2021-36, a resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor and declaring an emergency. No action is requested until September 21st, 2021.
So to be clear, this is a second reading emergency in that case, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Palaniuk, did you want to speak to this one?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of council. This essentially authorizes and certifies that 2022 property tax roll. We do this every year as a matter of course. For this year, that would set general fund levy at 4.15 mils, police pension at 0.30, fire pension 0.30, capital improvements levy 1.0, senior levy 1.0, and that's the last year of the senior levy. And then the Conservancy District 0.15. So in total, that is 6.90 mils on the property tax levy in the aggregate. And in combination, that is expected to generate $5,580,000. Of that total, the general fund specifically would get $3,480,000. As you will see, that's a fairly significant increase from last year because of the reevaluation that we saw in this last year.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from council at this time?
I would just underline, because I get these questions on occasion, that when the reappraisals are done, that's not the city raising your taxes. This is a county-wide assessment based on the property value as done by the county auditor, and this is not the city of Middletown exercising that authority.
Do you know an approximate percentage of how much our property taxes come back to the city vice the county?
Oh, it would be a sort of arithmetic of, what is the total millage levy and then how much of that is our percentage, and we only levy, 6.9 mils. So I think we're at maybe 66 or something like that when you put all the schools in the county and everything together. So we're a relatively small portion on the property taxes.
Okay, we're ready for the next one.
Next matter for your consideration is Ordinance O 2021-68, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing the continuation of a contract with Safe Skies Aviation LLC for fixed-base operator services at Middletown Regional Airport on a month-to-month basis and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second?
Mr. Palaniuk?
Yes, in this case, as we continue to work through the final efforts to get a new fixed base operator and manager for our Middletown Regional Airport, we have had to have an interim fixed base operator, in this case Safe Skies Aviation, who has been doing that for us now for some months. This would allow us to continue the existing contract at the existing rates on a month-to-month basis for the next several months while we finalize those efforts. So same terms as we've had consistently. This would just follow it up. $17,124 per month. And it would allow it now to go through December 31st of 2021. We don't necessarily believe that it would be needed that long, but again, rather than having to potentially come back again for another continuation, we wanted to have the authority to at least get it through then.
No comments or questions from council? Ms. Gank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Abstain?
Ms. Vettori,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon.
Yes.
Next matter for your consideration is ordinance O 2021-69, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing a contract with A.E. David Company for the purchase of body armor for the Division of Police and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second?
Mr. Palanick, would you like to comment?
Yes, in this case, we have the opportunity, the police department have been able to receive a $40,000 grant through the Ohio Grant Program for Law Enforcement Body Armor, and we'd like to take advantage of that. The A.E. David Company of Dayton is the entity that is authorized to be the seller under the terms of the grant program. So if we then put $43,215.50 along with the $40,000 grant, then we have the opportunity to purchase this additional new body armor or bulletproof vest for our police department. So it's already been budgeted. However, we need to take some of that budget money and put it into a supplemental appropriation specifically to the police grant budget, because this was in the regular police department fund. And we have to do this as an emergency because we have to get this purchase done prior to September 31st of 2021 under the terms of the grant. So we would ask for your approval in that regard.
Any comments or questions from council? Okay, Ms. Gank, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan.
Yes.
Next matter for your consideration is ordinance number O 2021-70, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing the continuation of the airport grounds maintenance contract with Schulte Business Services on a month-to-month basis through November 30th, 2021, and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Mr. Palanick?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of council, this is very consistent with item number 5, also a continuation of our maintenance work out at the airport. This would be with Schulte Business Services, who have been doing our grounds maintenance, so the mowing, the trimming, the weed control, litter control, any and all support for the turf runway, the taxiway. Our initial contract was under $25,000 that had been done administratively at an amount of $5,900 a month. But for us to extend this now for an additional 3 months that will take us through the mowing season, that is September, October, and November, we would need to add another $17,700 to the contract. Again, under the same terms that they're already doing it for, would take us through the end of this year. Obviously, we hope that there will be a new FBO services prior to that time, but we would like the authority to be able to do this to have the continuity. Funds are budgeted and available within the airport fund.
Any comments, questions? Okay, Ms. Gank, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Vettori,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey.
Abstain.
Item number 8 this evening is ordinance number O 2021-71, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing a contract with CBM Managed Services, now known as Summit Food Service, for jail food service in 2022. Here for a first reading.
Mr. Palanick?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of council, we have been working with CBM Managed Services for quite some years now on the provision of jail food services. I think the contract was first in 2017. It expired but allowed multiple additional one-year renewals. This would be the year renewal of January 1st, 2022 through December 31st of 2022, so the next full calendar year. It continues the same terms, which is $2.40 a meal, with a minimum of 50 inmates, so that minimum is $2,520 a week. No increase, but it does maintain the same per meal and or the same minimum. If we find ourselves in a condition like we did for a while under the pandemic, where there is less than 50 inmates, then that additional food would wind up being and is donated to charity. So we would ask again that we have authority to continue this for an additional year with CBM. I think that the last time that the department tried to bid this out, they found that there was essentially little, if any, takers, and if there were, it would have been at a dramatically increased rate. So we're comfortable with the food that has been provided and the rates and the service that they've given us.
So we went back and forth on this about a year ago, and I'm curious what our average inmates are now.
Chief Burke, I'm sure, can answer that.
Returning to normal, or are we still way down, or?
We were averaging about 42 a day, but we had some COVID incidents in the jail, so we had to reduce the population again. We did put this out for bid. They were the only company that bid it 2 years ago. So we explored other options with Payne, with Butler County, and by the time we picked up the food from there and transported it back, it wasn't feasible for us to do that. So, anything else?
Next matter for your consideration is item number 9. Ordinance O-2021-72, an ordinance authorizing the Middletown Transit System to operate fare-free in calendar year 2022. Here for a first reading.
Mr. Pelenick.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of council, as a result of the CARES Act and the American Rescue Plan Act, there has been a lot of additional funding for transit systems. So in addition, for 2022, in the budget that you'll see, there is no subsidy from the city for operating the Middletown Transit System. There is also no need to actually charge fares. So we are asking that for another year, much like it was during the pandemic year last year, that for 2022 we authorize that the Middletown Transit System continue to run fare-free.
Could these fares be, or these funds be used for other transit-related items?
The funds that we would generate from
We're talking about,
fares?
I'm sorry, the CARES Act funds that you were talking about that essentially negate this cost for the city?
Those are funds received by Butler County Metropolitan Transit, who operate our system on our behalf. So we're not actually receiving the funds, but they are. But by them receiving it, we're not having to subsidize the system. So it comes back to us by not having to have money come from the general fund to subsidize the transit system.
So if we were to charge fare, we would then have a revenue into the general fund?
Essentially, yes.
I think
Although, no, it would have to go to the transit fund, so it would go into the reserve, the reserve for the fund, and get used again in the future, however, but it would have to stay in, it's a closed loop system, it would have to stay within the fund.
So what is the purpose behind not charging the fare?
I think that's multiple fold, if I may. Not charging the fare prevents a hand-to-hand contact between the driver and the parties, which is helping to reduce the transmission of COVID.
We're talking 2022 though, correct?
Oh, yeah, but I believe there is an ongoing concern about transmission, and that is an ongoing concern for the drivers and running the system. I think it also, in a year where people are still trying to financially recover from job losses and closed businesses and things, that it allows them some transportation options without having to consider the cost that for some of our citizens is a real and immediate need.
What has been the purpose of the transit system? Like, do we know what the users are using it for? Is it strictly to get to work? Is it?
It is definitely, those people who use the system are almost entirely transit dependent. So they don't have other alternatives because, quite honestly, this is not the most convenient alternative because, again, you got fixed routes. They don't, run at convenient times. You have to use what you can. So for the most part, they're using it to go to work, to healthcare, to retail, to do shopping, or to, in a sense, get wherever the normal person needs to get with transportation because they don't, in most cases, actually have transportation of their own. So they're not people who have automobiles and choose to take the bus. They are transit dependent, almost exclusively.
To the mayor's point, should we decide to charge a fee, would the county still be willing to expend their CARES grant dollars if we were going to charge?
We haven't had that conversation. I guess that's something that could be had.
Do we know how much money the fare would essentially equate to if we were to charge? I mean, how much are we talking?
I don't have a dollar figure. I will tell you that traditionally, in a year where we charge fares, it's between 5 and 6% of the total operating budget for.
Right, but I have no idea what that equates to.
I believe the operating budget for this year was, and I apologize, I'm speaking in round numbers. I believe it was right around $2 million.
It's a few $100,000 at best from the fares, and usually probably less than that.
And what is that money traditionally spent on in years where we do charge fare?
Just goes to operate the system, because usually we're subsidizing the system. So we have to put general fund subsidy toward the system, and our subsidy is lessened by having fares. But as a result of the CARES Act, basically we've eliminated both our subsidy and the fares. So it's kind of a windfall for the city. So we're passing on that windfall to the users of the system by saying, by us not having a subsidy, also you don't have to pay a fare.
Might I also add that if we did have excess funds, that maybe we could improve such a system that would be better used for the users in the end?
I think one of the great things about the partnership we have with RTA is that they have been wonderful stewards of the grant funds that come to Middletown Transit. For example, I believe in the budget that's going to be presented to you this year for next year, there is no subsidy from the city. There is no fares to the riders. There is also additional money to study transit routes, potentially the addition of a new bus station, and working towards those goals. So if you have additional concerns that you would like us to take a look at, we're certainly happy to take those back. But I think one of the things I've been incredibly impressed with RTA is their ability to leverage those grant funds and say, we have these grant funds and here's how we can fit them into different buckets to accomplish our goals. In my work with RTA, we've, expressed some of our goals, and they've worked, at least my goals, into that budget without having to have this fare money.
So you're telling me there's no use for these funds if we were to collect it?
If you have additional items you'd like us to take a look at, I'd be happy to do so. But I guess what I'm saying is inherently, our ability to accomplish goals is not hindered by the collection of these funds.
Maybe our goals aren't big enough.
Yeah, and if we would like to expand those, we certainly can. But I think accomplishing our goals is not dependent on having these fares, I guess was the point I was trying to get to.
If I could note too, and having been involved with a number of transit systems over the years, it's becoming more of a trend throughout the country now, and independent of the pandemic, because it was starting well before then, to go fare-free, because almost no system in the country generates more than a few % of its actual revenues through fares. These systems are all highly, highly subsidized. The money comes from the state, the federal government, and the local, taxpayer. So the goal is, if you want to have a robust system and get people to use it, they're trying to create ways to encourage. So the difference between charging someone $1 or $2, whatever the small amount is, that doesn't even come close to providing the cost of the system, they'd rather encourage people to use it than to get this tiny percentage back. Whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, but that's just a trend that you're seeing.
I don't think we're at the point where we're encouraging people to use it by not charging fares. And it's not useful enough probably for that. But my other concern, and we mentioned this, I think the first go around on the fare free was, especially as the winter months come, how does how do we keep people from circuit riding a bus as a essential homeless shelter?
RTA does have operational policies that addresses that and helps to refer them to services and get them off of the transit system. I
Do
couldn't
you know,
promise.
because last time that question was received with, if they need a place to stay warm, we're fine with them riding the bus. And then that's a different answer from what I'm receiving now.
Maybe I have misunderstood them, but that was my understanding, is that they address those concerns through an operational policy.
Okay.
I'm happy to look for additional information,
Yeah,
but
if we
that's my
can-
understanding.
If we can find a policy on that, that would help a lot too.
Happy to look for you.
Thank you.
Susan, I'm also curious if there are any other cities in Butler County that have chosen not to operate fare free, or is everyone in Butler County going with the program?
To my knowledge, there are only 2 bus systems that operate in Butler County. One is Butler County RTA and one is Middletown Transit.
Okay.
Butler County RTA is operating fare-free until 2024. When they originally asked us, we weren't comfortable and suggested this year-by-year basis that we continue to evaluate it. But my understanding is RTA is operating fare-free for the remaining part of the county till 2024.
Okay. And then comparing Butler County to neighboring counties, say Warren County, Hamilton County, what is the trend in those counties with using this CARES Act fund for fare-free riding?
I can tell you that in Wisconsin, everybody was going fare free. They were, following that trend. So prior to coming here.
I guess I just struggle with the pros and cons a little bit and trying to understand.
I guess transit, advocates would still say, the goal is to put less automobiles, less, exhaust fumes, less use of gasoline, everything else, by having more people ride transit in every form possible. So anything we can do to encourage it, that's the goal. So hence, when you have a chance to get more people and you can do it without hurting the system financially, because there is this opportunity, then what you're seeing is most people advocating that, be fare free.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you.
Next matter for your consideration is item 10, Ordinance O-2021-73, an ordinance amending various sections of the Middletown Development Code of the Middletown Codified Ordinances. Here for a first reading.
Mr. Palahniuk.
If the mayor or city council have any more specific questions, this is basically the public hearing that Ashley presented. We will get you further answers, or if we can answer them this evening, but basically this, of course, is the item related to those various changes to the code that you heard about during the public hearing.
Any comments or questions at this time? Okay, thank you.
Item number 11 this evening is Ordinance O-2021-74, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a grant agreement with Compassion City Center Incorporated. Here for a first reading.
Mr. Palahniuk.
Yes, so we heard a presentation this evening from the folks at, technically their title is Compassion City Center, but it's Midway Baseball. So we're excited at the prospect that we have some additional CARES Act funding available through our CDBG program. And since most of the children, if not all of them, are eligible based on being, low to moderate income or coming from low to moderate income areas within the community, this, we believe, is a great use of some of this funding. So we would like to offer $10,000 of existing CARES Act CDBG funding to assist the Midway Baseball group to really get started and to bring back some of the youth recreation that these volunteers are working so hard to support in the community.
And do we know, is Compassionate City Center Incorporated, so does that do other operations besides just Midway Baseball?
That is actually the fiscal agent for the organization.
Okay.
So it will be a grant agreement with them donated specifically to Midway, but we needed a proper fiscal agent to make the grant too.
Gotcha.
So it will be earmarked for Midway Baseball, but they're acting as the fiscal agent.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, is that one a first read emergency or not?
We had on normal.
Okay, normal. All right, thank you. Sorry.
And the last matter this evening is Ordinance O-2021-75, an ordinance authorizing the execution of a cooperative agreement by and among the City of Middletown, Ohio, the Middletown Port Authority, West Tech Road LLC, and the Huntington National Bank as trustee, approving and authorizing related matters, and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Mr. Pelenick?
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of council, I will apologize first of all because the legislation for this came to you very late, but you should have it now. But we did provide you a staff report in your normal packet, and I'd like to sort of go through that so you understand what we're asking. We also have representation here from the developer, so if you have additional questions, I'm sure they would be more than happy to answer them. You may know that recently the announcement was made that Phoenix Metals are going to be doing a big major expansion within the Made Industrial Park to the tune of about $15 million worth of investment. But in order to accommodate that particular development, there has to be an extension of the Made Industrial Park Drive, the roadway itself, as well as the underground utilities. So the developer, in a sense, has to wind up doing that, and they were looking for financing to assist in that manner. And it's been kind of a struggle for a while. We started out working with the Warren County Port Authority, but for a number of reasons, we just couldn't put together the deal there. And then we started to talk about, could we lessen the overall size that would actually decrease the road, so not as much of the park would be served at this point in time, but would certainly serve Phoenix as well as 2 additional parcels that will be made available for industrial development to bring the cost of the road and the utilities down, and then have the Middletown Port Authority get involved, and if possible have the MADE group, the original group that were put together to do economic development, provide a kind of financial backing that might serve as a guarantee that would allow this financing to move forward. So what ultimately happened then is we did those things. We got the overall cost of the financing down to $2,800,000. And included in that financing is all of the capitalized interest to pay the debt service up until the point that the project begins and the special assessment gets put into place. Another full year of debt service baked into the financing. And then as a first commitment to pay that financing back, there will be special assessments against the properties out there. And 50% of that will be covered by Phoenix because they have 12 acres, which is essentially half of this. And since they have over $15 million worth of investment, there's no question that they will be covering their portion of it. The remainder will be with the developer until such time the developer sells it to others who will invest in the park, and at that point it will switch to them. And if there are larger amounts of investment, then again, there's good reason to believe special assessments will be paid, they won't be delinquent. However, as a kind of belt and suspenders to have enough guarantees to make sure that this is ironclad, if you will, as a second position financial guarantee, we got the folks from the MADE board to agree that they would put in escrow 3 full years of debt service. So this is on top of number 1, capitalized interest, number 2, a full year of debt service, 3 more years of debt service in escrow. And then as a third financial position, only to be looked at, only to be utilized if the first 2 were completely exhausted, the city itself would come into play. So what you're being asked with this request is to take a third position, financial guarantee, to the debt service on the extension of this drive. But we would only ever be in position to have any liability if, number 1, the special assessments didn't pay for it, and then number 2, the 3 years of debt service held in reserve by the MADE board didn't pay for it as well. So if it ever came to be that the city actually had any sort of liability, those funds would first come from the TIF that's in place, the 25% that's not being given back as an incentive, and the portion of that that isn't also being repaid to the schools. If that wasn't enough, then it would actually be an appropriation. There is virtually no circumstance that I could ever imagine that would get to that point, because if you ever had one of the entities required to pay their special assessment not pay it, then that is a first position lien against the property, and it would be sold basically for that. The value of the property would be greater than the special assessment, and the monies to pay the special assessment would come out of the property sale. If there was any investment at all on the property, there would never be a reason not to pay the special assessment, because you wouldn't risk losing your major investment for what is a much smaller special assessment. And then after those special assessments, of course, we have essentially 4 full years of debt service in reserve to make certain that the city should never have to come up with a payment on this. So unlike perhaps sometimes in the past where we might have just simply made a commitment to cover things and hope that it went well, we feel entirely comfortable in this case. While it makes a difference to help the financing and make the rates come down a lot, our guarantee should never have to be called upon. And also I would point out that both John Westheimer and Jason Maney are here representing the developer. And if you have any questions for them, I'm sure that they would be more than happy to answer them. The other thing is that the Port Authority for the City of Middletown, this will wind up being our first deal for the Port Authority. The Port Authority will make some fees off this for the first time. So instead of spending money, the Port Authority will for the first time start making money as a result of this project. But it will also serve to make a difference for a major important economic development project that's coming forward. So we're excited about it. We think it'll make a difference. Obviously, it supports Phoenix Metals, and not only that, it could support 2 more significant new industrial developments once that road and those utilities are in.
I feel like everything sounds like this is a really positive development, and I'm excited for it. I have a major heartache with having received this and not had any time whatsoever to look over it, and I feel like I would be doing a disservice to the oath that I took to even vote on it at all, because I've literally been reading it during the meeting, which is what was forced on us with this timing. So I would like to make a motion to table this, and I will call a special meeting so we can approve it, but I can't, in my conscience, vote on this right now because I have not had the chance to read it.
Just before you make any further motions, I'm going to say that the issue here is trying to meet Phoenix schedule, trying to meet the developer's schedule. We've done everything in our power to get there. I think the concern is to build this road and these utilities during this construction season, because if they don't get started at a certain time, then obviously you're limited by weather. So that is the big issue. We've been pushing our, attorneys to work over the weekend, which they did. We've been meeting at every point in time to meet the developer's schedule. It got pushed off. I mean, we've been working on this for a very long time. Unfortunately, it didn't work out with Warren County. But there is nothing different about your legislation that wasn't completely described within the staff report. So nothing is new, nothing is different, nothing has changed. It's there. And I would ask either of the gentlemen that represent the developer if you have anything to offer in terms of your schedule. Will it make a difference if this gets pushed out any further? I mean, I'll ask you the question, and maybe you answer the question for everybody. So, anything to offer?
Well, I mean, we can't predict the weather. That's the biggest risk.
I mean, I'm talking a matter of later this week even would be my proposal.
We don't want to create a false emergency. I mean, we want to do the right thing.
I guess the other thing is,
A couple days we'll make it done. No, we wouldn't want you to make it.
the special assessment ordinance still has to come to you as well. So obviously they also can't. So this is the precursor and the first step to that says the city is willing to make this guarantee, which will then support the special assessment ordinance. So know that there is.
Before the special assessment?
Yes.
Be approved?
Yeah.
And those cannot be presented at the same time?
No. Because there would be no special assessment ordinance if they didn't know that the 2 entities were guaranteeing it, because you wouldn't be able to get financing. So it's sort of this sequential thing. If you don't put the cards in a certain order, you can't get to the next one in this case. That's why we never got to it with Warren County. They required too many guarantees that nobody could come up with. We reconfigured it. We changed the size of the road and the utilities. We got it down lower. We came up with a completely different concept for the guarantees. We got MAID involved. We did it in a really short period of time. Again, it's the way economic development works. You work at it forever, and then all of a sudden at the end you try to make it happen in order to meet everybody's schedule. So that's all we're trying to do.
So is the goal to get the special assessment legislation on the next city council docket?
That would be the hope.
We can't even do anything until then, but how long will it take to create that legislation? How long will it take for you guys to get?
It's being, it was started to be worked on, but the developer has to apply for it, basically. That developer's not going to apply for it if they don't know that their guarantees are coming, because they won't do it if it doesn't work financially.
And I absolutely value the speed of economic development and don't want to slow anything down whatsoever. That's not a goal of mine. My principles just tell me I shouldn't vote on this tonight. That's where I'm coming from on that. And like I said, I make myself available as soon as we are able. I think it's 24 hours notice to the press for a special meeting.
Honestly, if you don't feel comfortable, that's obviously up to all of you. I don't know if we gain that much by having you create such a disruption, create a new council meeting entirely. I don't know. Unless the developer thinks so, you can probably just put it off to your next meeting.
And obviously, I don't know my fellow council members, and they may not feel that same way, and I respect that. I know how I feel about it, and I have to stick with my gut on that. But I want to make myself available to make this happen.
So currently, we have a first and a second to approve it as it's written. And then the mayor moved to postpone until everybody had a chance to read it, so.
I had some questions. Are we still in that?
We are, yes. I just wanted to.
We can ask questions, sure.
And I'm frustrated as well that we received this at the last hour, and I know it's nobody in this room's fault that happened, but it just.
I can't tell you how frustrated I am.
Yeah, I'm sure you're frustrated as well, yeah.
The 2.8 million that the staff report talks about, is that the whole piece, or is that the 50%? Have we already subtracted the 50% Phoenix?
No, that's all the debt. That's all the financing. That includes the road, which is $2 million. It includes capitalized interest. It includes a year of debt service as a reserve, and it includes issuance costs. So $2 million is the actual construction costs. Largely speaking, the $800,000 is all of the other stuff that puts more belts and more suspenders on it, so that it capitalizes within the debt service all those things to make us more comfortable.
So it's well under $1 million is the total concern in third position. Is that correct?
Well, yeah, and it's over a 20-year period. So on a yearly basis, the debt service is, and I think we included that in the packet in the thing, it's like less than $200,000 a year, something like that. And Phoenix would start picking up about 50% of that, so that's about $100,000 of it. So worst case scenario is it's $100,000 a year, but we know that there's a minimum 4.5 years there before anything could ever happen. And by then, there's, again, development issues should more than cover it. Again, you can't make it any more risk-free than this, basically. And still provide any meaningful guarantee.
I mean, we could sit here for an hour and read it.
The other thing I will say is, this is the first step. And again, it doesn't ultimately happen until the Port Authority approves this as well, and you all approve a special assessment. So there's a number of things that still have to be done, one of which, if you don't approve, it won't go forward. But if you don't get it started, it also doesn't continue. So in that regard, as a Port Authority member, I'll have a vote on that. Mr. Moon, you'll have a vote on that at the Port Authority, on actual issuance of this. If we don't like the numbers, don't feel it's appropriate at that point.
So, where do we stand on this?
Are there any? Motion and a second. Couple different things could happen. You could vote on it as an emergency like it's read. It'll either get approved or not approved. You could ask for it to be brought back at a special meeting and read as a first reading. You could approve it as a second reading at the next meeting.
So let me clarify, my motion was to table it for a special meeting emergency vote. Would be,
Okay. I think, if I may,
yeah, I would love your help navigating this.
The mayor's made a motion to table the matter. I would ask if there is a second first. Okay. Hearing none, then that motion will not carry. So at the moment, with that, we have a motion and a second to vote as is listed as an emergency. I would suggest we proceed with that vote. Ready? Do you have any additional questions?
Nope. Any comments or questions from council?
I think the clarification that, if we go home and read this tonight and really have something to hem and haw about, there are other outs in future legislation, right?
Yeah, there are other
Basically
off-ramps.
what you're saying.
There's a special assessment, there's the Port Authority itself. So yeah, this doesn't automatically get this project done.
Right.
This would have to have those things happen as well.
Okay. All right, then, Ms. Skink, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori,
Yes.
Okay, that brings us to our new business section. Do we have any topics that anyone would like to raise for new business?
Mayor, I do have just one request of Mr. Palaniuk. At the Thursday chamber luncheon, you had mentioned the reorganization of code enforcement, and I thought it would be helpful to the listening audience and maybe council too, just to hear about that redesign and how that implementation of that might assist in raising code enforcement and helping staff performance duties.
Yeah, our recent reorganization basically took the code enforcement duties away from a police function and put them under development services. We wanted to recognize the fact that all things neighborhood, building, housing related are under one department who have a kind of laser focus on those issues related to improving neighborhoods. We also now will have a deputy director whose primary focus will be on code enforcement. And we have, really sort of strategically looked at how we can best marshal the resources we have and increase those and then improve the focus. So really, in every regard, the reorganization was designed to say, this is a really important function. Not that we weren't doing it well before, but I think it has more focus with folks who understand it maybe a little bit better and can give more of their resources to it than perhaps in the past. So with that, we feel like it will be a better, and at the same time, it frees up the police department, which again, being understaffed, have so many different things that they could be working more on that, we feel good about not having to have them worry about that anymore. So in that regard, we think it's good for the organization as a whole, basically, because we can really focus a lot more on code enforcement itself. And we hope to do it in a more efficient manner.
Thank you. And I understand from Mrs. Combs that there will be maybe a refresh of the website for reporting. If citizens want to report an issue, that's going to be implemented too.
Yeah, we've been working for some time now on one of these sort of general management things that are far more user-friendly to the consumer so that, one stop, you can go onto a website and identify a particular code enforcement issue, not only submit it, but then monitor it over time to see where it is, what's happening, or if anything's happening, and to be able to know where it's at. So working on that as well.
Mr. Palaniuk, speaking of the website and just sort of integrating those things, I'm curious, and maybe this is a question for our IT department that you can get back with me on, but have we ever considered the development of a more user-friendly app that a citizen could download on their phone that would make that kind of reporting easy, online water bill payment and that sort of thing, just from a more user-friendly non-desktop version, app?
What I know I'm not is very good at IT. So I will get you that answer, but I would hesitate to try to answer it because I will almost certainly be wrong. because, the IT folks understand the website, the user interface versus an app much better than I do, but we'll get you a better answer on
Just
that.
would be curious if that's a road we've ever gone down or anything that we've ever been interested in.
And I know there are some places where apps work really well and others that not so much, but if that's the case, we'll look into it.
I was wondering if there was any update, and maybe I can ask my co-counsel. I know there's been an uptick in some homelessness issues, and I know the two of you were reaching out to work with Butler County and other neighbors a few months ago, and if there were any updates on that. And then secondly, more to the city perhaps, is are we still working with I believe it was one city contract and trying to match people up with services using that group? Because I know I've just been getting a lot of emails this week from downtown businesses and even just downtown visitors. Literally someone who drove through downtown called me and was like very heated about what they saw. And so I guess first to you guys, have we made some progress with your outreach? And
I had a couple calls in the last month and a half. I don't exactly recall. One of them was with the mental health, Butler County Mental Health, because I saw they put in a request for ARPA funding for a crisis center. They ended up withdrawing that, as you may have seen.
Yeah.
And their position, I believe, don't quote me on this, Rick, was that they were looking for some of the other nonprofits to take the lead on that. And I now know that I believe somebody in Hamilton has put in a request, and I believe Access has put in a request for a facility in Hamilton. I would say as many great conversations as I've had with our partners in the region, I haven't been able to nail anybody down, but made a lot of good inroads. But again, getting a consensus has been like nailing Jell-O to a wall.
right. And I feel like I had the same experience, the 6 months or year prior to you all, which is why I think before, when the city was trying to come up with solutions, I was really advocating for them, just knowing that at some point, we have to take care of our own citizens if we aren't able, and maybe even lead, so that we could hopefully then draw in more partnerships. Just, it's not something to obviously do anything about today, but I think it's just a broader look at the situation, which nobody has a great handle on.
And that's what I have found too. Everyone I've spoken with says, oh, yes, that problem. And no one has taken
right.
Which was, I was hoping that the one city contract, we would already have, actually, I'm glad you brought it up, but have statistics that I thought we were going to be getting those on a regular basis. And that would really help conversations because we really can't. I mean, that was, I think, part of the reason why a lot of us approved this was to be able to do that and then move forward with it, so.
And we do hope in the very near future to have a full, complete update from those folks. And we understand you'd be expecting that. Well, one thing I wanted to note, and in the 14 months I've been here, I found it kind of odd that everywhere else I've been in the country, these issues are county issues. Social service matters, Health and Human Services are the province of counties, local governments, not so much. So, we've done a good deal more than most local governments would do relative to the homeless issue, but it would not be inappropriate to be looking to our friends at the county to help us solve this. Particularly right now, I think most people agree, the communities around here, that this needs to be a regional solution. And there are lots of resources. There are all kinds of resources that could go to it. That's not an issue. The issue is, back to what Councilman Moon said, basically no one willing to take the leadership as to who will take ownership of the issue and manage or operate whatever facility is necessary. The resources are there. There's all kinds of ARPA money, there's CARES Act money, there's opioid settlement money, there's state money, there's all kinds of stuff looking for a place to fund, but we don't have anybody in our county that says, okay, here's the regional place, the facility, the solution on how we're dealing with this, and we're all going to work together. No one wants to step to the plate and say, we're going to own that, operate it, and run it. If they did, they'd be, talking to the county now, but whoever did that withdrew it. And no one has come into the void. There's this vacuum in which nobody wants to step up and do it, where typically it would be a function, an actual department of the county that would be doing that. And that's what seems so unusual here. So I don't know.
Well, and on that note, maybe the opioid settlement funds that are creating this at-large body, I'm not sure what we're calling it, but a council of sorts to spend the 60%, I believe it is. Maybe that will help kick us in the butt and organize us in some way as a state or Southwest Ohio to talk and work collectively, since we will have shared funds to do so. I'm not saying that means someone's going to volunteer a location, but the discussion is going to be forced if that moves forward.
It'd be great to see our data too, again, just to maybe start to lead the conversation, if we've learned anything from working together with the One City program, and if there are outcomes or anything we could speak to.
I believe Chief Burke.
I know he's like inching his way down.
Yeah, come on
He's
down.
not coming down.
COP officers have been working with One City Victoria twice a week. They are building those relationships that I asked them to build. The first couple months, when they would go to different camps, they would kind of leave because they knew One City was coming at a certain time. But now they are welcome to come in there, so they have seek treatment and housing for, I know, at least 8 people. It doesn't sound like a great number, but I know 8 have seeked housing and treatment. They're working on several others. And when it comes to the increase in homeless, I've had officers looking at the bus route with RTA. There is a bus route that runs every hour to Hamilton from Middletown, every hour on the hour. So what's happening is they're going to Serve City in Hamilton and then coming back to Middletown during the day hours and then going back in Hamilton in the evenings. So we are seeing an increase in some of the homeless coming back and forth on the RTA bus. So that's why we're seeing an increase downtown, increase in different areas. So we are seeing that. But One City's been great. We work with them on a regular basis. Even the patrol officers working in the evening, if they have a question, they call Victoria with One City, and she either comes out or makes arrangements the next morning for them. So I will get the data from her. I know they've identified 120 homeless people so far, most of them being outside the city.
So are you saying they came here during the day and went back to Hamilton at night, or?
Yeah, what happens is Serve City allows them to stay there at night. So what's happening is the officer went down there today, and off of High Street, they're getting on the bus. The bus runs every hour on the other. We have one leaving Hamilton, one leaving Middletown, and they're just driving it back and forth. So they're coming here, getting a ride, and then going back into Hamilton in the evenings.
They come here during the day, go back there to sleep.
Yeah, do we know why they're coming here during the day? Like, is there some big draw
We have a
in
lot of
Middletown
services.
that brings them here during
We
the
have
day?
a lot of services that we have the Gathering, we have the Dream Center, we have other churches providing food. So we do have a lot of services here in Middletown that draws a lot of people here.
And the reason they're locating in downtown is because these people can ride the bus into downtown, and then they can get services and do all the things that they want to do right in our downtown.
Yes, ma'am.
Fare-free bus.
But I will get you the statistics from One City. I'll see them tomorrow. I'll make sure we get a detailed report so I can update you.
Does she work with the Gathering as well? Because I know.
Yes, she does. She works with the Gathering, but she's been working with our COP officers on a regular basis. So she's been a great asset.
I think 8's great, by the way. I mean, again, it's a good number. It's 8 people who otherwise would still be on the streets or maybe not with us, so. But I look forward to seeing the data. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Do we have any idea how the movement of the syringe exchange has affected all of this?
I believe the exchange has been great. The numbers are about the same. What they're doing is they're grabbing the RTA bus and driving it out to the east end of town and having their needle exchange. So I don't believe the numbers have been reduced. It's just they're not concentrated in the downtown area.
I just keep hearing a lot of our transit system is being used to transit homeless people. That's what I feel like I'm hearing. I'm sure they're not the only ones, but man, it is definitely enabling the nomadic homeless life, for better or worse, without having fares. But, okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Thank you. Slightly similar topic. I have noticed, I was going to bring this up regardless, but I've noticed at Smith Park we leave the electric on all year round, and we are getting an increase in people plugging their nomadic vehicles. I hesitate to call them RVs. They're not exactly that, but they are plugging them in during the day and charging up batteries only to go somewhere and live off of the batteries at night, as well as people coming out of the woods to charge their electronic devices at Smith Park. So I'm not sure if the goal is to provide free electric at Smith Park to citizens, but we have a lot of outlets there and they're getting used a lot, and I don't know how much that's costing us.
I guarantee you that's not our goal. We will look into that.
Okay,
I
figured
appreciate you bringing that to our attention.
Yeah, okay, great.
One other item, if I could just ask, and that was our community center committee. How were we doing? I know that the school board had moved along. I think they were getting somewhere, hopefully. I don't know if we're prepared or getting closer to naming those folks that we wanted to be able to get assigned to that, those 5 community members. I guess as well as the 2 council members as well.
I submitted my name.
I have not. I went back and forth on a couple, so I don't have mine ready, but I can submit it to you yet this week.
Yeah, ditto. I'll get it to you this week.
I've reached out to a local employer, and they've told me they will take part. They're selecting who in their management team will be that person.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And I'm still interested in being part of the committee. So, thanks, Ms. Vittori.
Thank you for raising that. I meant to discuss that too. Great. Any other new business? Okay. We have a request for executive session at the end of this under the authority of ORC 121.22G1 to consider the appointment, employment dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official. Do we have a motion to move to executive session?
So move for adoption.
Second?
Ms. Gank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Ms. Vittori?
Yes.
With that, we will move to executive session, and our next official meeting after that, we will reconvene on the 21st of September, Tuesday at 17:30 or 5:30 p.m. here in council chambers. Until then, blue skies over Middletown.